Today, we have a member of our community among us here who works on behalf of hundreds of families like her own. People who are caught up in incomprehensible and seemingly arbitrary deportation system. Her efforts have gained special relevance since the overzealous enforcement of immigration laws post-September 11. Our next speaker, Aarti Shahani, is one such activist who works on that issue. She is co-founder and organizer of the Families for Freedom, a New York-based multi-ethnic defense network for immigrants fighting deportations. Ladies and gentlemen, here is young and energetic Aarti Shahani, a pride of our community.
I just passed a note to our MC mentioning that I don't speak Sindhi, so I'm not sure how much of a pride I am to the community right now, but hopefully I can return in a couple of years, saying this all over again with better news and also in a different language. So, with your help, right? So my name is Aarti Shahani, and I'm a co-founder and co-director of Families for Freedom. Families for Freedom is a multi-ethnic network based in New York for immigrant families who are facing and fighting deportation. I want to talk a little bit today about not so much politics back home, but politics in the United States. What's going on within the U.S. post 9/11 as well as pre 9/11. And in some ways, actually, I might differ with the previous speaker in terms of the optimism or the descriptions of the U.S. today. Right now, I would say that we don't really live in a country that has judicial balance of powers. We don't really have democracy in this country, and things are very quickly going downhill. And I hope that while we talk, and I hope that people have comments as well and questions, we can discuss a little bit about the ways that this country is changing and the reasons that we really need to watch out for, because it's very relevant to our lives right now and our future prosperity and the health of our communities here. I'm going to start, however, with a pop quiz, okay? I'd like to ask, and I will call on people if I don't hear people shouting out answers. I'd like to ask, how many people do you believe have been deported in the last 7 years from the U.S.? 5,000. Another guess, please. 7,000. One more guess? 100,000. You're the closest, but still very far. 1.2 million. It's a huge system we're talking about. I'm sorry?
In the last 7 years.
During the last 7 years. And I'll come to explain why that number is important. What nationalities would you say are the most deported in this country? Mexicans. Okay, everyone knows that, right? And post 9/11, what would you say are the growing nationalities? Pakistan and Bangladesh. Exactly. So people are in tune with that. How many people here have green cards? No, green cards. Raise your hand very high, please. You can put them down. Now, how many people here are U.S. citizens, either naturalized or born? Okay. And how many people fall into a different category? Whatever that category may be. All right. Final question. Does anyone here know somebody that's undocumented? Anyone here? Come on, raise your hands. Anyone here know someone undocumented? I'm not saying in the room, in general. That's it. We're immigrants, right? Okay. About 4 people in the room know someone undocumented. I should leave them. No. So, a little bit of history first, okay? In 1995, there was a terrorist act, okay? Can anyone tell me what that was? Oklahoma City. And what was Oklahoma City bombing perpetrated by? Who was it perpetrated by? Timothy McVeigh, that's right. So in April of 1995, a white citizen American and veteran of the first Gulf War, Timothy McVeigh, bombed the Oklahoma City Federal Building. Exactly 1 year after that, Congress passed a sweeping anti-immigrant measure called the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act, along with a sister bill, the Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act. The reason I ask in the last 7 years how many people have been deported is because since 1996 and the actual enactment of the laws in 1997, the United States has seen the explosion of an immigration control system. The reasons that people get deported are growing yearly. The number of people being locked up, put into deportation proceedings, thrown into prison, and then kicked out of the country is growing exponentially year by year. Now, the 1996 immigration laws, again, on the heels of a white veteran bombing the Oklahoma City building, transformed the status, the legal status of immigrants in this country. The 96 immigration laws, they expanded the grounds on which immigrants could be deported. So that, for example, if you're living here for 20, 30, 40 years, but you're not yet a citizen, let's say you have a green card, and you were arrested one day for something connected to your family business, or a tax issue, or let's say driving illegally, or under the influence, or while intoxicated. Despite how long you've lived here, you are subject to mandatory detention and mandatory deportation, which means that no matter who you are as a person, no matter what your ties are to this community, you will be kicked out. Apart from that, the ability for people to gain asylum here plummeted following the 1996 immigration laws. And not just is it harder to get asylum in this country, but when you come here seeking asylum, what happens to you? Let's say you come to the airport, you come to the border, and you explain, I am fleeing my country for this or that reason. And what happens is that you get locked up immediately, and you're thrown into immigration detention. Every month I visit a man, actually from Bangladesh, who's been now in immigration detention for 5 years, fighting his case against deportation and trying to stay here. Now let's fast forward a little bit. People have heard about deportation primarily in the post-9/11 context. Right? People have heard about the explosion of immigration enforcement, the attacks on Arabs, Muslims, and South Asians post-9/11. And following September 11th, specifically the Patriot Act is what people have heard of. Now, one little fact to put out to people is that the laws passed after 9/11 haven't actually changed that much. And the U.S. has had a very sort of long pre-existing agenda in immigration controls to tighten the immigration laws and actually regulate the types of rights that non-citizens have in this country. But following 9/11, the thing that primarily changed was the enforcement of immigration laws. And I'm going to talk about a few initiatives very specifically and experiences that we've had. Following 9/11, there was the Absconder Apprehension Initiative. Now, the U.S. used to believe, or used to work on, at least theoretically, in a balance of powers. There are three branches of government, right? The legislative, the executive, and the judiciary. Increasingly since September 11th, the executive branch itself has been knocking out the balance of power. Basically trying to make the other branches irrelevant, trying to make them moot, and trying to legislate, or excuse me, not legislate, but bypass legislation and have laws unto themselves. Okay, so the Absconder Apprehension Initiative is one such example. Following September 11th, the Attorney General at the time, Ashcroft, decided, what was that? Ooh, yeah. Attorney General Ashcroft decided that he wanted to try and deputize all the police, all the regular police in this country to start becoming de facto immigration officers. And that's a trend here, right? In the United States today, there is a movement right down, a few miles away in the Capitol. There is a growing body of Congress people that are trying to make it so that regular agents, whether they're public school teachers, nurses, doctors, police officers, that these regular officials become immigration enforcement. So that, for example, if a pregnant woman went to the hospital and she didn't have papers, that would become an issue while she's in labor. But with Attorney General Ashcroft, he wasn't able to effect all of that type of change just yet, and that's not the U.S. that we live in yet today. But what he was able to do was effect this initiative to make local police able to enforce immigration laws for people that have old order of deportation or other immigration violations. So to put this in a real context, I'm sure I'm speaking in very abstract terms. One of the members of my organization is a Pakistani family. Now, Razia is the wife's name, and Hassan is the husband's name. One morning at 4 a.m., NYPD knocked on the door of Hassan, and they said, we're here to investigate an old burglary, at 4 a.m., mind you, at dawn. And the man, the husband, worked the night shift in Jackson Heights, Queens. He wasn't around, he worked in the video store over there. So Razia said, my husband's not home. She barely spoke English, by the way, speaking in Urdu. My husband's not home, please come back later. And so they come back on the pretense of investigating an old burglary. So when they come back, they don't have a warrant to enter the home. They claim that they're going there to help the couple. And they enter the family's home, and they start asking about this old burglary that the family had reported a couple of years prior. And after questions about the burglary, they ask about the immigration status of the family. And then it's very quickly disclosed that the husband and the wife don't have papers here, they're undocumented, and furthermore, they have a deportation order from 1997. So then what happens? The police go ahead and arrest the husband on the spot, and they take him from his home in Queens over to a detention facility in Manhattan, from the detention facility in Manhattan to a detention facility in New Jersey, from New Jersey to upstate New York, from upstate to New York to Louisiana. All of this in the course of just a couple of weeks. During this entire time, the family did not receive notification of where he was, and he wasn't able to call into home. He actually had to have a fellow detainee go ahead and call his family and explain, this is where I am for my wife and my children. Now the story gets a little bit more complicated and interesting. I work primarily, I feel, with young men that have just been released from prison, and women who have husbands and sons, and sometimes daughters that are incarcerated. Now with Razia's family, while her husband was inside trying to actually fight his asylum claim again, we went to congressional offices seeking help, seeking support. She had 3 children, an 11-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 5-year-old. Now very sadly, what happens so much in immigrant families, especially working class families, okay, because our community is not just an affluent one, we have a lot of very poor people in our community, we have a lot of working class people in our community. Now what happens in many families of immigrants is that the children often have to take on the role of being the ambassador, the liaison between the family and the government agencies, whatever. So Razia and her family and we, her children and we, went to a congressional office in Queens seeking help, trying to get the Congressman, Anthony Weiner, a Democrat, to give help and give support so that her husband could be released from detention, so that while he fights his case, he could at least be the breadwinner, the provider, because she hadn't been working to that time, and they were on the verge of homelessness. So what happens is that we go to Anthony Weiner's office and we meet with another woman that works there, who's in charge of the immigration casework. This is a Russian immigrant and a mother. How many people here are parents? I'm not a parent yet, that's why I asked. I'm a daughter. So now we go to this congressional office, meeting with a woman who is also a mother, and we explain the family situation. And we explain, listen, Hassan has been in detention now for a year. His wife is on the verge of homelessness, the children are here, and the 11-year-old is translating for his mother throughout this visit. Now that woman, when we're asking, the woman is very cold, she's very frigid, she's like, I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do, there's nothing we can do. And something that occurs a lot, and I'm sure that people have noticed this in their lives, powerful people always have a way of pretending that they have no power. I constantly speak to members of Congress, to local city council members, to the mayor's office in New York, and every time I talk to someone that's supposedly been elected into the office, representing 8 million or 20 million people, they act as though I can do more than they can. This is very interesting thing about people once they're in a seat of authority. Anyway, this woman, when we're asking, she's insisting there's nothing I can do, there's nothing I can do. And then when we ask her, well then what about the rights of the children? You don't care about the wife because she has no papers? Fine. You don't care about the husband because he has no papers? Fine. What about the children that are born here? Don't they have rights? And that woman looked at Razia, a Pakistani mother, in the face, and she said, of course they have rights. The U.S. takes care of citizens. The U.S. takes care of its own. They can always go into foster care. Now, could you as a parent imagine your child's going into foster care because of immigration problems that you yourself have? And that's the response of the United States, a country that claims to talk about family values. We have a conservative administration right now that talks about family values, that talks about keeping families together, and meanwhile, through immigration policy, is tearing families apart. That's the state in the U.S. right now. Since 1996, we're talking about 1.2 million people deported. We live in a country where 15% of families, fully 15% of families, are mixed status, meaning at least one parent is a non-citizen and at least one child is a citizen. Now, interestingly, our families, our communities, sociologically, we're very integrated in terms of status, in terms of immigration status. Citizens, non-citizens living together, loving each other, working together. But immigration policy is slicing a very deep and growing line, a very deep and growing division between citizens and non-citizens. That's the sort of state of affairs we have right now. I think I have about 5 minutes left, so let me try to talk a little bit about what's going on now and ways to get involved as well. Following September 11th, alongside the absconder apprehension initiative that tore apart Razia's family and the heightened enforcement, we're basically seeing a trend in which immigration is moving from a federal issue to a local issue. Very recently, for example, Congress passed the Real ID Act. I'm not sure how many people here have heard of Real ID? Raise your hand.
What's that?
The Real ID Act? Okay, so we're, I would say, in a fairly educated room, right? I keep hearing doctors on the monitor and this and that, right? So, while we talk about, our business concerns, history, politics back home, right here in the US, about 1 month ago, Congress passed the most sweeping immigration reform in the modern century. Okay, and that's not an overstatement. The Real ID Act, let me summarize very quickly for you. For one, suspends or prevents driver's licenses from being issued to people unless they can prove their immigration status. Now, what does that mean for us? Most people in this room don't have to worry because you're in good shape. But it strangles our economy, right? Because a lot of our economy depends on people that don't have papers to be able to drive around, to be mobile, to deliver pizza, to deliver babies, to deliver whatever we're talking about. And driver's licenses basically on the federal level have been taken away from different people in different states across the board. What else is, and I just think about it as a New Yorker, for example. Anyone here from a major city? Where do you live? Major cities or?
Kalamazoo.
Kalamazoo. That's not a major city, but. So, I think of it, where are you from in the back?
Chicago.
You're from Chicago. Okay, I went to school in Chicago. Now, could you imagine for anyone that lives in a major city, what would happen to our city if immigrants stopped driving or stopped working for a day?
Chaos.
Everything would shut down, right? There would be chaos. People wouldn't get their Chinese food delivered, right? People wouldn't get their farm produce brought from upstate in the heart belt inside the cities, right? So now the Real ID Act basically steps in and makes it so that while our business needs and our economic needs continue to be there, while we still want our lawns mowed for maybe $10 for 2 hours worth of work, while we still want food cheap, while we still want produce cheap, the people that we depend on for labor are being criminalized. Now suddenly, the people that are being hired by, employed by the companies that we rely on for our services and for our wealth and for our consumption, these people are going to have their licenses taken away from them and then being put into deportation proceedings whenever picked up and basically being strangled economically. That's one thing that Real ID did. Clearly, one of the most radical changes in this century. One other very radical change affected by this bill was the suspension of habeas corpus. In the US Constitution, there's an emergency brake valve. That emergency brake valve is called habeas. If, for example, I'm ever arrested, or if you're ever arrested, and your arrest is unlawful or wrongful, you should be able to go into court. So the executive branch, for example, is arresting you. The executive branch is taking you into court or into jail. Now, you should be able to file a habeas petition with the judiciary branch to challenge that detention, to say, no, this is wrong, this is unlawful, I'm being wrongfully taken in for X, Y, and Z reasons. Now, Real ID Act. Hello? Real ID Act, for the first time since the Civil War, suspends habeas for immigrants that are placed in deportation proceedings. So imagine the 1.2 million people that have been deported in the last 7 years. Every year we're talking about another, 150, 200, increasingly going up to 300,000 people. Those entire class of people are not protected by a constitution whose words state that they protect persons and not just citizens. Those are the types of changes we're seeing in this country. And I think that, as I talk about this, I feel like maybe this is very abstract. And this is hopefully something that won't touch your lives. But the reason I actually talk about this and the reason that I know about this is because when I was a student at college, I am, by the way, 25 years old. But when I was a student in college, I was attending the University of Chicago and studying anthropology. My own family was touched by deportation. My uncle was deported to India back in 2000, and my father was placed into deportation proceedings in 2001. And from that moment, my life that I thought was very comfortable, my life that I thought was very comfortable And I thought my family was very comfortable, and I thought we were very secure here. I'm a U.S. citizen, my mom's a U.S. citizen, my dog is a U.S. citizen, and my father is a green card holder. We thought that we were safe here, and that was taken away. And increasingly, I see that happening to different families in our community. And so, because I was told to be precise and cut it short, I don't expect that we can sort of communicate very deeply or very much about what's happening in the U.S., but the salient point I would leave for people is that this country actually is transforming politically. And domestic politics here are very important, especially what is happening to immigrants, specifically non-citizens in this country. Because it's connected, it's a...
मोहतरम पलीजो साहब, मोअज़्ज़ज़ दोस्तों, सना जी तंजीमी कमेटी, स्पेशली नारेजो साहब, आउं 10 मिनटनि में मूंसां थियल ज़्यादती जो जेको आहे सो तदकार करण जी कोशिश कंदुसि। मुंहिंजे लाइ ही अॼोकी गॾिजाणी इमोशनली जी स्पेशल बेयरिंग आहे। So I would like to put my submissions in a mixed language, and that is the language that most of us are very comfortable with. हर के माण्हू मंझ मणिया पर मूंखे अहिड़ा मुड़ुस वणिया जे पंहिंजो जी जलाए विया पर सारो जग झरकाए विया। मुंहिंजी सियासी ज़िंदगी खे 2 ॾींहंनि खां पोइ 28 साल थियण वारा आहिनि ऐं अॼु खां 26 साल अॻु सखर जेल जी नंढड़ी खोली में जंहिं मुड़ुस माण्हू सां गॾु चंद घड़ियूं गुज़ारण जो वक़्तु मिलियो, अॼु मुंहिंजो दोस्त असां सां गॾु हिते मौजूदु आहे। ऐं I kept thinking all the time त गुज़िरियल 26-27 सालनि खां वठी असीं हमेशा जिते बि पाकिस्तान में, पाकिस्तान खां ॿाहिरि कंहिं बि फोरम ऐं प्लेटफॉर्म ते सदाई रोज राड़ो असांखे पंहिंजनि झांगारा ऐं बाजारा जो रहियो आहे, पर असीं अमली तौर ते उन्ही में के हद ताईं कामयाब थिया आहियूं। उन्ही जा जवाबात असांजा बाक़ी दोस्त मूंखे ॾींदा ऐं मुंहिंजूं चंद गुज़ारिशात आहिनि ऐं उन्ही में आउं जंहिं नुक़्ते ते पहुतो आहियां त we have to put our acts together, whether we are a member of a civil society in Pakistan or active member of civil society here in the United States of America. If we are concerned about the land of Latif and we are member here, the land of opportunity, we need to merge our resources, we need to converge our thoughts and focus in one particular area to make a change. असीं सब जगह इन हॉल में वेठल आहियूं, उन्हनि घिटियनि मां, उन्हनि ॻोठनि मां, उन्हनि वथाणनि खां हली करे हिते ताईं पहुता आहियूं ऐं मुंहिंजे दिलि में हिकु अजीब कैफ़ियत आहे जॾहिं आउं मुंहिंजे दोस्त मज़र लाखे खे ॾिसां थो, डॉक्टर शबीर शेख खे ॾिसां थो, डॉक्टर एजाज तुर्क खे ॾिसां थो, वकासी साहब मौजूदु हुयो, डॉक्टर नारे जो मुंहिंजी अखियुनि जे साम्हूं नज़र पियो अचे। असीं सभई पंहिंजी जवानी ऐं ज़िंदगी जे मुख़्तलिफ़नि मरहलनि ते असां में हिकिड़ी फायर हुई, हिकिड़ी मिशन हो, हिकिड़ो एम्बिशन हो, हिकिड़ी स्ट्रगल हुई ऐं असां कोशिश कई टू चेंज आवर ओन लाइफ and we succeeded in that. All of us, we are sitting in this hall, we have made our lives better because we were given a fair opportunity in a fair land which is called land of opportunity. There was a mechanism of self-governance through the instruments of democratic institutions. There was an instant justice and fair treatment. There was a right to speak, right to associate, and we all had our own choices to make. We have prospered, and now we look back, we still want to connect with the land of Latif, we still want to connect with our Jhangara, Bajara, Bhetaro, or any other location that we come from. What do we do from here? I would only focus my submissions on that Musharraf regime